we have a dating crisis right now. More and more people are single. People are not having sex. People are not getting married. People are not having children. And people are lonelier than ever before. So a lot of this advice, which causes us to mistrust people, to be hyper vigilant of red flags, is now, I think, tipped to the other side where we're walking around with walls. And I don't think that's conducive to the way human beings are wired, which is for connection.
Welcome to Ambition 2.0, the new podcast from Girlboss, where we explore what it really takes and costs to have it all in work, life, family, and love. I'm your host, Amanda Goetz, two-time founder, five-time CMO, and author of the bestselling book, Toxic Grit: How to Have It All and Actually Love What You Have. I am so excited about today's guest. Let me just set the stage here. She's a leading relationship expert, author of Breakup Bootcamp, The Science of Rewiring Your Heart, a best-selling book. She is the founder of the Renew Breakup Bootcamp, and her new book, Unsingle, How to Date Smarter and Create Love That Lasts, is out this coming April. Today's guest is Amy Chan. Amy.
Hello.
Welcome to Ambition 2.0.
Thanks
How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm great.
It's an early morning. We're in Vancouver. I'm so excited. Your work has helped me so much as I've navigated even post-divorce breakups. So I'm just so excited to dive in. I ask every guest this first question. What does ambition mean to you, and how has it changed over the years?
I think when I was younger, ambition meant a lot of hustle, and it meant having the title, it meant having the status, it meant having a lot of money and buying all the designer things.
Right.
And now it's different. I'm now in my 40s, and ambition to me is really being clear on what your dreams are and not minimizing your dreams because you think, well, that's not realistic or that's not possible. And those dreams can be anything. It could be financial, it could be buying a home, but it could also be other things like having a family or being a really good caretaker to your mom. Yeah. And so it's not so much tied to, I think, financial wins as much anymore, although that's great too.
Yeah, no, totally. Okay, so Today, I really want to dive into, there's so many angles we can take this conversation, but I really want, since there's so many ambitious women listening to this podcast, I think it's important to talk about some shifts in numbers, okay? So women are projected to control over 60% of global wealth by 2030. In every single state, women's college graduation rate was higher than men's. Women are up to 3 times more likely to seek mental health services. So how is this shift showing up in dating?
Women are no longer tolerating low standards. At least it's shifted a lot. There are some who do, but I think overall you're seeing a trend where women would rather stay single than to date someone who isn't coming to the table with much. And before, I think it was very different. When I look at my mother's generation, she wasn't looking for emotional intelligence. She had to survive by getting married, and she was the supporter of her husband who had a business. And now today, like as her daughter, I don't have to marry to survive. And so I think because we're not coupling up for survival, we're coupling up because it's a choice. Is it going to be additive to my life? Is it going to be the dessert versus the meal that's going to sustain my life?
Right. It's like the picture of the Maslow hierarchy of needs. It's like our parents had literally couldn't get credit, couldn't buy a house. So it truly was the bottom of the Maslow hierarchy of needs of like, I need shelter and support. And now we've moved up and it's like closer to the self-actualization of like, does this person help make me better as a person? Okay. So you work with a lot of high achieving women. What are the specific ways power and success start to show up as a liability in dating? And maybe liability is like a tongue-in-cheek word here, but like, how do you feel like the more powerful women become, how does that show up in maybe some self-sabotage in dating or some potential traps?
Yeah, there's a few different patterns that I see with very powerful, successful women. One is they are saying that, well, I'm meeting guys who say that they're intimidated by my success. That's one. Another one would be, um, they are working in fields where it's highly competitive, sometimes dominated by males. I see this a lot in the financial industry. And in order to survive and to thrive in that workplace,
Mhm.
they have to kind of play the game of what these men are doing.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to their romantic relationships, something that kind of approach doesn't turn off. And so they use that same approach, but then they're not getting the results that they want in the romantic relationships.
Mm.
And I do feel like there has to be an awareness of what that energy, the result of that is, versus if you shift that energy based on the other parts of your life.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, let's dive into that a little
Yeah.
bit more. So basically, you have goals at work.
Yeah.
And there's a certain style that gets you those goals at work. And what I'm hearing you say is if you have goals in dating, you have to kind of evolve what your approach is to dating to achieve those goals.
It's not about your goals. So I'll give you an example. A lot of the people that I work with at Breakup Bootcamp, they are used to, they're building businesses, they're CEOs. If something is broken, they will fix it. They will do anything and find 25 solutions to make it work. When we go into the romantic relationship and maybe there's a partner who then becomes the project or the thing to fix, or the relationship itself is a dead end relationship, but they keep using that same approach. So they will find 25 solutions, overgive, over accommodate, and they're not getting the results that they want and they're very resentful for it. But that man or that partner is not the same as, the merger.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So what's your advice? First of all, what's the first step if somebody recognizes that they are a fixer? Like they know that they can fix anything, do anything. If they put their mind to it, they can achieve it. And they see potential in somebody. What's your advice to them?
There is getting comfortable with allowing space. Let me explain. There's an exercise where we have two people and they're facing each other, and there's a series of questions. And the first question, they can talk normally. The second question, the person who's listening can only use their body language. They can't use words. And then each kind of question that we progress, we strip away a sense. So after, you can't use your hands, you can only use your eyes. What happens in this exercise is people recognize, like, wow, when there was no one filling in the gap, I actually had time to process and to speak more, and I was talking more. And it was a very interesting aha moment for a lot of the people there, that when they just allowed space, even though it was uncomfortable and they wanted to fill up that space, they saw that the other person was able to fill up that space. And so I use that as an example or an analogy in how we live our lives. We are uncomfortable with space. We fill up that space because we're like, they're not going to do it anyway. But when you are doing 90% constantly and taking those steps, you only leave 10% for the other person. And so I think that is one thing we can try, and just getting comfortable, and that it might not be perfect and the other person might not pick up the baton and do what you want, and it might require a lot of communication. But I think that is a very good first step.
I love that so much. And you're giving the person the opportunity to show who they are instead of filling in the narrative that you have about who they are for yourself. And I think for me, after my divorce, like I got married, I was 19 when I got engaged, 21 when I got married. And then I became single in my 30s, and I'm like, oh, I have to learn how to date again. And it was so interesting because I spent so much of the early years trying to prove that I was dateable, like I was worthy. And it took a lot of work to be able to kind of like both literally and emotionally lean back and let the other person create that space so that they could lean in and be like, oh, are you somebody I want to date? Instead of me spending the entire 90% being like, no, let me prove to you, right?
Yeah.
So I love, that was the visual that I was like kind of picturing as you were saying that. As an ambitious woman, we tend to worry men may think, if I can't give her what she already gives herself, what value do I have? How do you coach women to kind of think through that narrative? Or even men on the other side? I'm curious, like, what the other side of the equation looks like.
I don't think it's a woman's job to coach someone's out of their insecurity that they are not enough, because no matter how much you coach, you can't change that. You can be supportive, but that's not your job. And I think for men, I think this is actually a really great opportunity for men right now, because for the first time ever, if you don't have a ton of money and assets and all that stuff, you will still be able to get dates and have a partner if you have emotional wealth, right? This is very different. In my father's time, he had to have financial wealth. Emotional wealth did not matter. It's just very different now. So there are men who have financial wealth and they're able to have that traditional kind of attraction, fine. But now, like, as a man, you can learn for free how to build your communication skills, how to be loving, how to be compassionate, how to build your empathy, all of these things. And that will make you more of a viable partner. So I do think that the smart guys who right now, yeah, it is a hard economic time. It doesn't mean that you're not worthy as a human being because you don't have a high paying job. But at the same time, while you're looking for your job or your next opportunity, you can also build your emotional wealth. So I think that that's great. And I think women are also, when you aren't needing a man to pay for your food and your home, what we're prioritizing is different as well. And I think that's important, because I think sometimes this old traditional mindset about what a man needs to have, well, there's trade-offs to that.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, have you ever dated a really, really rich guy?
Yes.
And guess who's making the decisions, guys?
Yeah.
Not you.
Yeah. The balance of power and money in a relationship, let's like kind of dive into that a little bit more, because I have seen and also experienced in past relationships, when the other person had power and money, they felt like they had control. And if I had more power and money, there was a weird thing that happened and I don't know what the neuroscience is behind this, but it almost sparked in some people the need to try to control me even more. And is that something that you see in relationships where, in unhealthy relationships, let's just be honest, that what are the power dynamics there with money, and how do you communicate ahead of time? Like, hey, there's going to come a point where I might be the breadwinner in this situation. It might shift. What conversations do you need to have to kind of get ahead of that or navigate through that?
I think it's challenging because you can talk theory all you want. And then when the situation happens, all of these old wounds come up, right?
Yeah.
So you can have a partner who's like, oh my gosh, yeah, babe, I'll totally support you.
Be my sugar mama, yeah.
And then when it happens, like, they feel threatened. And so I don't think it's a one conversation that you have. It's an ongoing thing, and there's seasons. However, I think that you can look for things in a partner, and that is, does a person have generosity as value? And I don't mean financial generosity of spirit, of flow, of like, it's not just about money. I really optimize for that in whether it's romantic partners or friendships. It is a way of being. And like other values to look for, like, are they growth oriented? Are they able to be flexible when there's a pivot? And you can start seeing that within the first 3 to 6 months to see, how do they handle these curveballs that happen? Because whether it's the money dynamics changing or a pandemic or whatever it is, there's going to be stuff, and that dynamic is going to change constantly. And it's not about like, okay, I need to make sure that we've got it all right and they're going to do this and I'm going to do this. No, you need someone who's going to be able to ride this journey with you.
That's such great advice. You said like 3 to 6 months you can start to see and navigate some of those pivots and see the flexibility. what's your advice on casual dating leading to exclusivity? I know when I was, a single mom, 3 kids, juggling a startup and work, if I met a guy that I was like, you seem cool and great, I kind of like went all in, but it takes time, to your point, 3 to 6 months to kind of see if they have those values, those qualities. So what is your dating advice on going all in? When do you know?
Yeah. So this is what my whole like concept in the book Unsingle is about. I talk about the dating funnel and that there's 5 different stages of dating, from casual, which is like lead generation, like prospecting, online dating. And at the bottom of this triangle, inverted triangle, is retention. Like, how do you keep and sustain a relationship? And so there's some other stages that a lot of people miss. And one is the evaluation stage, which is the biggest part of this funnel. And this is like dates 3 to about 20. And this can be in the course of, 3 months to more, depending on how much you see someone. But this is when you evaluate someone through time and experience, and you get to see what is their character. You have your first weekend trip together and you see how they navigate when the plans change or when the flight is late. So you want to not just evaluate someone on the best of times. You really want to see how someone is during the hard times and during conflict. And there is a point where you know someone enough and it's good enough where you're like, okay, the only way to see if this can be a great relationship is to jump in with 2 feet. And that's when you would move into commitment. So
I love that.
That's kind of like, I think, not having the evaluation stage and just being like, oh my gosh, I feel chemistry, or oh my gosh, the timing. It's a really bad mistake that can cost you years, if not decades of your life.
Yeah. Ooh, I'm like literally visualizing it. As a marketer, I love that. But also it's so real. And I love that you put a time frame, like 3 to 20 dates. Like, it takes a while. I want my daughters to listen to this episode in 10 years. Like, It takes a while to get to know if somebody has those qualities. Okay, I would be remiss to not talk about the very viral Vogue article that came out months ago, but the subject, or the headline was, "Is having a boyfriend embarrassing?" Now, obviously that was kind of a clickbait title, but the whole purpose was the decentering of men and not letting that be the only kind of goal that a woman has in her life. And it's not anymore. There's so many other goals. So as a dating expert, how do you see the cultural narrative from things like this impacting the women who actually do want to find love and have partnership? I know when I saw that article come out, I'm getting married in a few months, and I was like, oh, I'm not on trend. Like, this is so, like, I'm not. And that's the problem with societal trends and things like this. But I know, obviously, logically, the point is really like, it's the not centering your whole life around this one purpose. But if that's a goal that you have right now, how do you coach someone into being okay with like making that a big goal in your life?
Yeah, I think that there are, again, different seasons in your life. And I work with a lot of, very successful women who spent the last decade building their career. And then they're like, well, I want a relationship, but there's no shift in how they're prioritizing their time or their effort. And so I would coach that woman and be like, okay, if this is our goal now, you've already got your net worth where you want it. We actually have to make it a goal and do the exact same thing, which is like, what are the steps that we need to take to close this gap between where you are now and where you want to be? And it's very trendy to be like, you don't need a man, and like, it's embarrassing. And again, that is very great for the clicks and the algorithm. But we are social creatures. We bond. It is totally normal and okay to want a relationship, and a healthy relationship. I think it's great that the narrative is changing, that you don't need a relationship to be whole.
Right.
Wonderful.
100%.
But it is totally okay to want a relationship along with community and a career.
Yeah. I when I read the article, the thing I thought about was, I would have gladly stayed a single mom if I couldn't find the person that was additive to my life. And then when I found a person that actually made parenting more fun and silly, and I enjoyed and I felt like I was seeing life in a more glass half full kind of way. I'm like, oh, this is what amazing partnership looks like. But I totally understand that if somebody, it's the I don't need someone, but I want someone narrative that I think we also have to underline too. So people don't, especially people in their women in their early 20s who they see articles like this and then they're like, well, I don't need a man, and then they find themselves at 35 and they're like, like I
Right.
need to shift things and I want to do that. So I love how you phrase that.
Can
So
I just make one more note on that?
yeah, please.
The I don't need a man, the I don't want a man sort of thing. I have people who say that, and when I dig in a little bit deeper, it is not based in truth or abundance, and it's based off of a protective mechanism. And so there's some who truly don't want a relationship, and that is totally okay. I think what people need to ask themselves is, are you saying that you don't want a relationship because it won't risk vulnerability or getting hurt or rejected? So it's easier to be like, I don't want it, I don't need it, I'm totally fine, I want to be single forever. You just have to ask yourself, because it's going to be different for everyone, but we
Yeah.
have to be aware of when we're just having protective mechanisms versus the truth.
Mm. Okay, let's kind of shift into value psychology and just kind of navigating this world. You recommend making a list of partner values, which you touched on, like flexibility, generosity, and scoring must-have versus nice-to-have. How does this exercise differ for a woman whose career, like she's got the career, she's got the friend circle, she's got a support system, and she's got the self-love that kind of meet a lot of her life needs, and she sees not a lot of must-haves, but a lot of nice-to-haves? Like, how does that exercise evolve with an ambitious woman?
I think that whether you're an ambitious woman or you're not, I think it's still really important that you know what are your deal breakers. These are the hard no's. And it doesn't matter if you've been together for 3 years. If they hit something on your deal breakers, like, I don't know, hardcore drug use, for example, then it's a no, right? And then what are our nice to haves is what I call our preferences, which is, oh, I want someone who likes skiing, or I want someone who, I don't know, likes listening to podcasts. Those are nice to haves.
Mhm.
What happens is a lot of times people confuse the deal breakers with their preferences. They get
Mm.
over it. And I think we're in a culture right now where, oh, no, like dismiss them. I just saw a video that got over 1 million views about if a man asks you for a coffee date, you should charge him $500.
I saw that.
And I'm like, no, that's horrible advice. Like, we are dismissing people way too early. And what's happening is we have a dating crisis right now. More and more people are single. People are not having sex. People are not getting married. People are not having children. And people are lonelier than ever before. So a lot of this advice, which causes us to mistrust people, to be hyper vigilant of red flags, is now, I think, tipped to the other side where we're walking around with walls. And I don't think that's conducive to the way human beings are wired, which is for connection.
Mm. That's so powerful and so real. How if somebody's listening to this right now and they're like, ooh, I feel called out or seen. I may be one of those people that have been brick by brick building these walls up around me. What's your advice to start to open themselves up again?
When I have clients who say they've been cheated on or they've had a really bad experiences with men, I don't tell them to start dating. I tell them your next job, your next step is to make friends who are males so that you can actually trust again, and you can make the association in your brain that men doesn't equal complete catastrophic pain. I think for other people who maybe they're not at that end of the extreme, but maybe they've been burned and they don't like online dating because it's been awful. Finding different sources of what I call lead generation. I always say in top funnel, you should have 3 different sources of lead generation. So if online dating isn't a thing, find things where you will see new people, but you'll see them with regularity. So maybe it's joining a running club or some meetup group where the frequency will help because there's something called the mere exposure effect, where the more you see someone, the more it'll amplify the base feeling. So I think those are certain things, and just being aware of when you are over icking.
Over icking is so real. What is the most absurd ick that you've seen on a TikTok?
This isn't even on a TikTok. I actually had a dinner party, and we asked half of the women who were actually now married, what was your ick? And one was like, he chewed really loud.
Mm.
And like my sister, that was my sister. She's now married to him, right? Like I like these things that I icked a guy because he wore sandals on our second date.
I saw like running with a backpack on, and I was like, oh God.
Yeah, like I just think that, look, dating and putting yourself out there, it is a very vulnerable experience, and we are all flawed human beings, and we are nervous in the beginning, some more than others, and the ones who typically make really great long-term partners are typically not the ones who are the best at dating. They are not, like, they're two different sets of skills. Narcissists are very great at the first couple of dates. They're charismatic. They love bomb. They do all these things that these videos are saying, that's what they should be doing. But if a guy is taking you to a 5-course Michelin star meal on your first date, bringing flowers, you should be worried about that. That's not normal. They don't know you.
Yeah. Okay. I'm obsessed with this funnel conversation because I'm curious how you met your partner, because I met my partner on a dating app, but because of the way dating apps are, we didn't meet up right away. So he fell to kind of like my burial ground of past conversations. And it's such a gamification. You're just on to the next one, right? Then, because the way the dating app works, it connects to Instagram. And we actually met on a park bench in my town, but he knew who I was because of the dating app. And so to your point, like, dating apps may suck and may not be working for you, but it's a source of lead generation that it didn't work for us. But then we saw each other out and we're like, wait, and then we started talking and had a coffee date and then started dating. How did you, if you don't mind me asking, if you don't want to talk about it?
Yeah, of course.
Okay. What was your lead gen when you found your person?
So there's a little backstory to this. I was dating up a storm in New York. I was single for 5 years. And I one day was like, okay, I need more lead generation. And I talked to my friend who's a super connector. And I was like, Vishal, I'm like, I'm ready for a relationship. Like, who do you have for me? And he's like, Amy, like, oh my gosh, there's this guy. Well, I don't believe I didn't think about it before. And he shows me the photo of this guy. And I look at the photo and it's this guy, he's kind of leaning back and he kind of has this cocky grin. And I immediately in my head was like, oh, he's a finance bro. And I don't say a thing. I'm like, oh, do you have anyone else? And my friend, like, literally, he just takes his phone, doesn't bring it up again, and changes the subject. He never tried to set me up again. A year later, I'm on a dating app and I'm going through it. And back then it was Hinge. It showed if you have mutual friends in common. So I start talking to this guy. It showed that Vishal was our friend. So I text him like, hey, do you know this guy? And he calls me right away. He's like, you dummy. I tried to set you up and you said no. and it just shows, right, how I over-icked. I made this assumption that, oh, he's this, he's that. And that photo was, he was skiing for the first time. He was on the bunny hill all day, and it was taken at the very end when he was exhausted. And like, we've now been together for 6 years. And so I just think, like, whatever your methods of meeting people are, it doesn't matter if you have 100 people in front of you. If your heart is closed, you won't see anyone. And that's why when people are like, Amy, I want you to set me up, like match make me. I'm like, it doesn't matter if I put the perfect person in front of you. You are leading with your ego, because when you tell me what you want and you're telling me about their height, or you're telling me about their age or the job that they have to have, I'm like, I know you're not ready because you are behaving in a way that's contradictory to what you say your goal is.
I feel like a lot of people are going to hear that and be like, whew, okay. All right. Okay. Your first book and obviously Breakup Bootcamp and everything is around getting over a breakup, because that's a big kind of origin story for you of all of this. So Breakup Bootcamp, if you're going through a breakup, get this book now. High level, like initial do's and don'ts when you are going through one of those gut punching breakups that you just are like, it rocked your world.
Yeah. Yeah. The very beginning stage, there's a different strategy what you do there versus stage 4. And the first stage is you need your brain to understand that this person is no longer in a relationship with you. And so it requires a lot of processing. So the more you can journal, the more you can talk about it, it is helping your brain understand and get the memo, because otherwise on a chemical level, it doesn't know that it's over. Now, what the main mistakes people make after that kind of I'm crying, I can't get out of bed stage, is they then go into detective mode. And because the brain doesn't like open loops, they keep trying to close the loop by stalking their Instagram or figuring out this text meant this. And all of this just keeps you obsessing and ruminating over the ex. And it keeps strengthening those old neural pathways that keep you connected to your ex. So it is very helpful to, at some point, to actually cut off the communication and build the system so that you're not tempted, which is, unfollowing them. And I know it seems harsh, but you have to recognize you have a big, open, gaping wound and you don't want to add salt to it. And there's a point where that wound will scab over and then, yes, maybe you can unblock them or whatever. But in the beginning, it requires that.
I had a whole ceremony because when I was learning to date, I was bad at the rumination, and I worked with a therapist on this, and I created my own little ceremony, even after a situationship, which sometimes situationships fuck you up more than.
Sure.
And I had a little ceremony that I would sit down, I would journal the things I learned about myself through dating this person. And then I would maybe allow myself to look at a couple of pictures and be like, okay. And then I did the whole hide that person from my photos so the photo app wouldn't. And I had a whole system where I put the little graveyard emoji on their name. So that way when I saw, I'm like, no, this is not a person that I'm still connecting to. So I do think that is really great advice because that's what helped me get over people. Okay, you've built a media empire around something that you went through personally. And so someone watching you and kind of curious about kind of the business side of things. What do you wish you would have known as you went down this path of, becoming a bestselling author and building a media empire and the boot camps and everything that you've done around something that happened to you? What do you wish you would have known kind of in the early days of building all of this?
I worked as the chief marketing officer of Spin, the ping pong clubs.
Oh, yeah.
While I was ideating this and launched this. So I launched Breakup Bootcamp as a side hustle, and I de-risked it enough to a point where I felt like I could resign from my job. I feel like that was very comfortable for me. And it's following my passion, but doing it in a way where I would still be able to afford rent.
Yeah.
And so, what I wish I knew earlier, I feel like I had a mindset for probably the first 7 years where I did dream smaller because I was afraid deep down if I dreamed bigger and if I got it, what that would mean. And so I just think that, when I started Breakup Bootcamp, it wasn't an industry. 9 years later, it is an industry. There's a lot of people doing stuff in the breakup space. And I do think that if I just scaled a bit more, if I just thought bigger, I would have my business at a different level right now.
What was your first hire?
I've hired, everyone was contractors to this day. And it was teachers. I hired a team, and one of those facilitators still teach with me today.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk about your next book.
Okay.
You have another book coming out called Unsingle, and it comes out April 2026. What do you want to tell us about this book? What is the next evolution of kind of Breakup Bootcamp? And now it's how to date smarter. So you're kind of moving people into the next part of the funnel.
Yeah. So I think that a lot of people right now are struggling with dating, and there's a lot of advice on how you have to, fix yourself if there's something wrong with you.
Mm.
And what I've now experienced having run all of these dating boot camps and working with all of these single people is most people are usually just about one shift away from being able to create a relationship. And I know that sounds really crazy, but what happens is we are employing the wrong strategy over and over and over again. And then we're like, dating sucks, or there's no good men in my city, when you really need to work on the strategy. And so that's what I've done is I've created a strategy. It's a framework called the dating funnel. It helps you understand what are the main blockers at each stage of the funnel and how you can troubleshoot the right thing so you convert and go from casual to committed.
This is such an important topic because I think if you are moving into, I want to date smarter, for me, being in a relationship helped me actually work through some of the things I still needed to work through. And that's the thing that I'm super excited that you're doing in this, where so many people are like, I need to be perfect so that I can be in a relationship. And for me, I was so healed when I was single.
Oh,
and
yeah.
then,
Nothing triggers you,
Nothing
right?
triggers you when you're single. And then you get back in a relationship and you're like, oh, that wound's still there. That wound's still there. And I think that that's a beautiful thing about relationships is they are the most with the right person. It's the most loving mirror that you can have to say, oh, I still have some attachment issues, or I still have some trust issues.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful thing to be able to work through those with a great partner. So I love that we are not just in this, we're not sticking to the narrative that I'm better off alone, because life is sometimes easier and less triggering when you are alone, but there's something so beautiful about finding the right person and working through this. So I love that you're helping people move into that next part of the funnel.
Yeah, and I talk about this in the book. It's called an emotionally corrective experience where like myself as well, like when I was in a relationship, it was like all these sleeping giants just woke up and I'm like, oh my gosh, whack-a-mole here and there. But now I'm with someone who I feel very safe with. And I used to be extremely anxious and codependent. And I worked on that to a point, but it wasn't until I was in a relationship and then things would come up and then I would try different ways of solving something and not going back to my like wounded child self. And then it was in that kind of back and forth where I was able to heal some of this old stuff. And that's what relationships aren't there just to make you happy. They are there to help you grow.
Yeah. I have, I'll share just one tool that my therapist gave me as like a tool that has helped me immensely because I am an anxiously attached, normally, I've worked on it a ton, but I'm an anxious attached human. And one of the visualizations she gave me was that I have this little kind of jealousy monster inside of me. And when I feel that monster awaken, I am looking to feed it. And if I feed it, it's going to grow and it becomes insatiable. Yeah. And so it's better not to feed it and to say, no, I trust this person. And it was such like, I'm a visual human, and it was such a wonderful visualization. So I wanted to share that if anybody struggles with that. Okay. So I want to do one last rapid fire quick hits.
Ooh, okay.
I think this will be fun. Okay. First date pet peeve.
Checking your phone. Gross. Put it away.
Put it away. Nothing is that important for an hour. Yeah. What is a go-to outfit on a date for you?
It's typically a black dress that is not too revealing, but also not too conservative. I don't like to look too sexy on a first date.
Okay. Which is a better question to ask on a first date? What do you do or what do you value? Yeah.
Neither, because those are like very hiring questions. I think more like, tell me like what's one of the biggest lessons you learned during the pandemic, or what did you learn from your mom?
Oh, love that. You've already said this. Flashy dinner for first date. Is that hot or red flag?
I don't know if it's a red flag, but I don't know. I don't think it's necessary. I think someone needs to know who you are before they start lavishing you with all of these things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's a dating app red flag?
Dating app red flag. The ones who just want to be pen pals and never want to take it into real life.
If there's a man listening, what would be an ideal date to take an ambitious woman on?
Ooh, something that is active. It is always better to have a date where your heart rate moves because it actually increases chemistry.
Oh my gosh.
So, maybe you do some fun activity and then you pair it with a drink afterwards. And if the drink goes well, then it can go into dinner. Be spontaneous.
Love. Okay. Thoughts on splitting the check on a first date?
I don't do it.
Yeah. When your partner earns more, no big deal or needs conversation?
I think you'll need a conversation regardless because you should talk about finances on a regular basis.
Biggest piece of advice that you want to leave everybody who's entering the dating world right now?
Ooh, the right person may be in front of you. So it might even be someone that you know. And the problem typically isn't that you need to meet more people. It is to look at what is the thing that's blocking you from connection.
That's so great. Okay, Amy Chan, where can people find you and follow along on your journey with the next book?
Yeah, so my book is Unsingle. It'll be available everywhere. You can follow me on Instagram at Miss Amy Chan, and my website is also Miss Amy Chan.
Amazing. All right, guys, that wraps season 1 of Ambition 2.0, the Girl Boss podcast. I'm Amanda Goetz. We'll see you soon.